Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Sahara Omar. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist practicing here in the state of Texas. And today's video, I wanted to explore with you guys generational traumas, different types of generational traumas, and challenge you guys how to recognize these traumas and break them for the next generation. And hopefully you are making that choice to not repeat these dysfunctional patterns that we experience, okay? So in the first session, when I meet my clients, I draw this diagram with them. This diagram in psychology we call genogram. Genogram helps me see the full system that you grew up with and the system that you're embedded in and how that's influencing what you're struggling with, okay? So I'll explain to you guys there's more symbols that go into this, but for the sake of the video, I wanted to keep it a little bit more simpler, okay? So a circle usually indicates a female, square indicates a male. So your siblings will go on the same level as you, will go generation up, which will be your parents, your biological parents, and then grandparents will go above that as well, okay? If the couples, for example, are married, we leave the line straight. If the couple has been divorced, we put 2 lines to indicate separation. If the person is still with us, we leave an open circle or square. If they're no longer together or no longer with us, we put an X to indicate they have passed away. There's other symbols like how close the relationship is, if the people are closer together emotionally, if they are distant from one another, if the date of birth or the age, right? Like I usually either goes right underneath or above it as well. So there's more details that I usually add as I'm getting to know my clients, and it helps me see, like I said, the full picture right away, okay? And I typically would share with my clients the genogram in the first session as well, just so they can see right away as well what are they dealing with, okay? Now, there are 2 different generational traumas that we recognize. We have transgenerational trauma and intergenerational trauma. Transgenerational trauma is trauma that is being passed down through multiple generations, okay? So let's say, for example, if grandma was physically abusive to mom, then mom becomes physically abusive to you. That's transgenerational trauma. However, if the trauma is just being passed down from one generation to the next only, and there is no observation or witness from the generation before, we call that intergenerational trauma. So let's say if dad was verbally abusive to your brother, but not to you or to your sister, we call that intergenerational trauma, okay? Within families, we have potential different types of traumas that we first need to recognize and clearly label for ourselves. Most of my clients, they struggle to truly label things for what it is. There's a lot of minimization. Oh, that's not that bad, or everybody else experienced it. All of that is minimizing your experience. We want to get to a place where we can say dad was physically abusive, mom was emotionally abusive. When we label things correctly, we take ownership of our pain and we don't allow our pain to change our narrative and change our experience. So that's one way to also break the cycle when you own the language correctly, okay? So we have physical abuse. Physical abuse usually is anything that is assault, domestic violence, or physical punishment. So when we are recognizing or kind of reflecting internally if there was any physical abuse, we do not want to minimize that experience, okay? We do want to say truly if somebody was physically abusive to us, okay? And then next thing that we see in families is anything that is sexual abuse oriented. This is sexual assault, rape, molestation, or any sexual exploitation. A while back, I had a client who her father would take pictures of her without her permission when she was kiddo, right? That's exploitation. So I just wanted to give an example, what would that look like? And then emotional abuse, anything that is persistent criticism, right? Like nitpicking on the way you are, the way you think, how you feel. Manipulation, saying things and then taking it back and saying, I didn't say that, or I didn't mean that. Or sometimes parents would say things like, oh, I must be a bad mom, I must be a bad dad. That's manipulation, okay? And then verbal attacks, right? Like, so name calling, feeling degraded or being degraded verbally, that's also emotional abuse. And then we have also neglect and abandonment. Neglect is failing to meet our basic physical or emotional needs, right? So people that grew up in environments where they had to take care of themselves or had to take care of their sibling, that's a lot of neglect, right? That's not okay. And then abandonment is this feeling of emotional or physical desertion by a caregiver or loved ones, right? So left behind, this constant feeling of like, I had to fend for myself. I feel like I'm being left behind, right? So people that struggle with abandonment issues, they literally were left behind, right? So as you're exploring in your own healing journey and trying to understand what is being passed down from one generation to another, you do first need to, like I said, make sure that the language is clear. And then when you draw the genogram for yourself, or if you are in therapy, ask your therapist to draw the genogram with you. It is very important to recognize what is being passed down and label things correctly so that we can take ownership of our experience, and then we can make the decision if we want to pass down to the next generation the experiences that we have. Okay, so let's say you decide to have children in the future. They will go underneath here, right? So whoever your partner is will go on this side next to you, similar on the same side, the opposite side of your sibling. So if you truly sit down and self-reflect and recognize, let's say your mom was physically abusive towards you, right? You need to be a little bit more explicit what type of abuse it was, right? And feel those emotions that you're constantly running away from. Once that makes sense to you, then when you have kids, or if you decide to have kids in the future, your brain recognizes to not repeat the same behavior, right? So that's the challenge with all of us, is first recognize what you experience, label things that you experience correctly, and then hopefully you can practice not passing it down. That's what gets in the way for a lot of my clients. Again, it's the language. We have to be very clear and explicit what we experienced and not constantly minimize or run away or hide from it, okay? Hopefully you guys liked the video. If you liked the video, feel free to hit that thumbs up, share it with other people, and also feel free to leave a comment below what type of generational trauma you experienced, and are you challenging yourself to break that cycle. Thank you, everyone.